Stalingrad was a city in southwestern Russia near the Volga River. From the 17th July of 1942 to 2nd February of 1943, the city witnessed one of the bloodiest battles ever. Stalingrad was Stalin's city. His name was given to the city after the Russian Civil War. Stalin insisted that the city must be held at all costs. Stalin also knew that once Stalingrad was taken, it would be so easy for Moscow to be attacked. Stalingrad was Hitler's city. It was a major industrial city on Volga River, a transport road between the Caspian Sea and Russia. Also, to the oil-rich Caucasus, Stalingrad was the door. And carrying the name of the enemy, Hitler really wanted it bad. If I don't get the oil of Maikom and Grozny, then I must end this war, told Hitler. It was a rare piece of land for 1 million people who wanted it and 1 million people who had it. 1 year before the Stalingrad battle, in the famous Barbarossa operation, German soldiers achieved to come closer to Moscow. They were just 30 kilometers away to Moscow. But the timing was bad. It was winter time, the Russian winter time. The Russian winter stopped German army in summer clothes in December. One of the soldiers told they have seen the buildings of Moscow, but it was the first and the last. Soviet forces counterattacked and drove the German army back. Spring of 1942. The ice on German flanks started to melt down. The German army rested, stabilized and re-equipped. They were confident that they could fight the Red Army. They trusted on a nice weather that's not going to stop the tanks or freeze soldiers to death. Hitler's generals wanted to attack again to Moscow in order to take Russia's capital city. But it was Hitler's army and he ordered the army wherever he wanted. The directive was given to concentrate all forces to destroy the southern front line of Russia and advance in two directions. One to oil fields in Caucasus and another to Stalingrad. German armies joined one another and started to move towards Stalingrad. Meanwhile, after Stalin understood German army's intentions, Red Army units were being deployed to the eastern border of Stalingrad. The commander of the army, Vasily Chukov, told, "We will defend the city or die in the attempt." So it started. The German attack began on 28th of June in 1942. Germans advanced rapidly and they were followed by their Italian, Romanian and Hungarian allies protecting the German flanks. The Russian front collapsed and the army advanced towards South Russia's natural defense line, the Volga. Stalin ordered anyone strong enough to hold a rifle should defend the city. But despite their effort, Russian armies couldn't stop the Germans before the city. Russians were pushed back into the city. On August 23, the German army reached the north of Stalingrad and captured 8 kilometers along the river. The German artillery began to sink Russian ships and ferries. On the same day, other units of the army reached the outskirts of Stalingrad. Afterwards, someone else joined, the Luftwaffe. Germany's Air Force Luftwaffe sank 32 Soviet ships in 6 days. and moved through the city, dropping nearly 1,000 bombs over Stalingrad. Although the Soviets continued to support their air forces to the Stalingrad area, the Luftwaffe had complete control of the skies. By the 1st of September, the Soviets could only reinforce and supply their forces by crossing Volga under constant bombardment by artillery and aircraft. Several Soviet attacks were hampered by Luftwaffe. The average life expectancy of a reinforcement soldier was as low as 24 hours. Inside the city, many civilians were being evacuated, but Stalin prevented civilians from leaving the city, as he believed civilians living still in the city would encourage resistance for the city's defenders. So civilians, including women and children, were put to work. The German military system was based on the principle of combined teams and close cooperation between tanks, infantry, engineers, and ground attack aircraft. And as an adaptation to this, Soviet commanders kept the front line always close to Germans. They were fighting so close that the Germans took a dive bombers will not be able to drop their bombs on the Russian positions without risking their own German soldiers. Soviets understood that in Stalingrad, the best defense would be in buildings near strategically important streets and squares. They converted apartment blocks, factories, shops, street corners, and office buildings into strongholds with machine guns, anti-tank rifles, mortars, mines, snipers, and small units of machine gunners, ready for house-to-house combat. As a result, the fighting in Stalingrad was reduced to an endless series of small battles. For every street, every building, every floor, and sometimes for every room in a building. The Germans, calling this unseen warfare Red War, bitterly joked about capturing the kitchen, but still fighting for the living room. Some key positions in Stalingrad changed hands up to 15 times during the battle. The Russians had an advantage in night fighting among the ruined buildings and factories, sometimes just by using knives or grenades instead of guns. The ruined city was a perfect killing zone for snipers of both sides. Some highly successful Russian snipers became famous heroes. Nevertheless, the Russians starved most of the time. German artillery made crossing the Volga so dangerous, so it was soldiers and ammunition that was being carried, not